Alrighty, hopefully this video will not have me constantly bumping my desk and everything like I was last video and constantly having to that I had to fix the audio to get rid of. That was bad. But as the name implies, we're going to talk about a thread by EVS, and I'm going to go ahead and start out by reading the thread itself. Alright, first. The problems with SJW Comics today and the reasons Comicsgate was born, a thread. And he tags Eric July. I'm not sure who that is. John Malin and John Delarose. Which I thought those two didn't get along, but whatever. Ethan Van Sciver had, like, and it's, okay, yeah, so 11 points that he made. I wanted to make sure. Alright, so, from the beginning. Terrible postmodernist writing focused on inflicting the comfortable and alleviating the oppressed. 2. Changing the overall meta-narrative from escapist power fantasies to the gay multicultural utopianism, new insurgence of moral relativism, nihilism, cynicism, strong racial animus towards heterosexual white males, defilement of comic book moments, denigration, humiliation, and termination of legacy heroes, cheap, ugly, surrealist artwork, desexualization of female characters to the point of repulsion or androgyny, risk-averse storytelling for narcissistic selfie-taking Mary Sues, fast-track employment of artists, writers, and with progressive political biases or multiple diversity qualifiers, open antagonism towards older readers. I'm gonna go ahead and add to this. Like, there's points I'm gonna touch on a bit with these and everything, but I'm gonna add to it. Like, there's also the fact that any criticism that is lobbied toward the industry is immediately classified as any type of ism, phobia, or whatever. There's also the fact that anytime you try to actually, present this is a good story, they immediately go, oh, well, we got to change everything about that story that makes it work. It's a whole lot of that. I think a lot of it is these companies are banking on the movies. They're like, well, no one buys comic books anymore. Let's just bank on movies. One problem. One of the big points I've been trying to make when it comes to this is when the MCU ran off the comic fans with the Captain Marvel and the girl power moment in Endgame, something that was completely unneeded and just kind of, I feel like it really did give the movie a bit of tarnish that it didn't need. They could have had, I think that moment should have been, what was left of the original Avengers. I think that should have been everyone but Black Widow, who was dead by that point. But that's my point. When they started doing things like that, they ran us fans off. See, the reason why the MCU has steadily been declining movie after movie after movie, when I saw this, I said it was going to happen years ago. We all knew it was. The reason why it's been declining is because Marvel doesn't have guys like me constantly saying, you need to see this movie, talking about what storylines these movies have, and this, that, and the other, and oh man, we got to worry about this, and and remember this part in the previous movie, and they don't have that anymore. Now when people are like, oh, we went to go see the latest Marvel movie, did you go see it? Nope. Don't you want to? Nope. Well, I thought you were all excited about it. I haven't been excited about a Marvel movie since... you can kind of say I was excited for Endgame, but meh. And, literally when that conversation is had, that says everything about the current state of comics, because they're incorporating these 11 things that EVS was talking about into the movies. Okay, the terrible postmodernist writing focus on afflicting the comfortable and alleviating the oppressed. Need I talk about Black Panther? How they had Shuri referring to Martin Freeman's character, I can't remember his name, as a colonizer when Wakanda was never colonized. She would laugh at that idea. Alright, true, if the people writing the movie and making the movie understood, they would have them be like, Africa's problems, Africa's problems. That's the way Wakanda's been. That it's like they don't classify themselves as part of Africa; they classify themselves as a part of Africa or a part from Africa, and Africa's problems is its own. They got their own problems to deal with. That's the way Wakanda has always been, and that's really a big thing that you're seeing in a lot of these modern movies. DC is afflicted by it too. I mean, Birds of Prey had a lot of quote-unquote Whedonisms, which the Marvel Cinematic Universe was also really bad for having. So, moving on. 2. Changing overall meta-narrative from escapist power fantasies to gay multicultural utopianism. Need I mention the Eternals and the gay romance between one of the Eternals, his husband, and adopted son, like, family thing? Like, that is a prime example of that, like, change things that was not in comics, that didn't need to be in comics. There have been gay characters, yes, but it wasn't in your face, heavy-handed, and it wasn't like literally it wasn't a character that was gay in the comics. That was literally like they whatever. Moving on. New insurgents of moral relativism, nihilism, and cynicism. Need I mention She-Hulk? Like, seriously, She-Hulk? That entire series was that. That is a prime example of it. I mean, that whole bit where she's, oh, well, I've learned to control my anger so much more than you. That whole scene, prime example. Like, that character is not a good character. She is one of the worst characters to have, and she's the one of the new faces of Marvel. Surprise, surprise. Someone who you don't like and who's very much a cynic and who's just like, nee. 4. Strong racial animus towards heterosexual white males. Now, you can kind of say that they do this in this fact that they'll take, like, pop shots and things like that. Like, modern MCU, because I haven't watched it as much, you know what I mean? I can't really say for sure. I know I could remember that there was a couple woke moments in No Way Home, if I remember right, that I kind of rolled my eyes at. But that's like the only modern Marvel movie I've seen. I haven't bothered to see any modern Marvel movies. And I haven't seen a DC movie since, like, the Snyder Cut of Justice League. Like, Aquaman was good, but Shazam the first one was amazing. But after that, I was just, haven't bothered. Didn't watch Birds of Prey. It really was going to see Black Adam, but that was out of theaters surprisingly very quickly. I wonder why. 5. Defilement of comic book moments. Need I simply say Gwen Stacy? One of the key cruxes of the Spider-Man character was always the death of Gwen Stacy. That was a huge arc for Spider-Man, and having them go back, make Gwen Stacy cheating on him with Norman Osborn, having 2 kids of his, and so on and so forth, that is the, like, truest definition of defiling those comic book moments. And it happens in the movies too. They will either give moments to other people, or you get the idea. They're trying to give the member berries to the old heads like me, while at the same time robbing the very thing that would give us the member berries, because they don't understand it was very specific what was going on. 6. Denigration, humiliation, and termination of legacy heroes. Need I say what they did to Superman? Take, for instance, Brian Michael Bendis ruining what was probably DC Comics' best book with the Super Sons. And then breaking up, Lois and Clark, and just all the various things that they've done, not to mention the modern having the S&M costume, Superman costume in Lois's, closet, Jonathan Kent being bi, Tim Drake being bi, Batman being bi, and so on and so forth. Everyone's bi, gay, trans, whatever. That is that is primest example of that. Cheap, ugly, surrealistic artwork. Now, this one's going to take a little bit to break down because, let's be honest, there's some artists that are amazing, and I don't want to take away from their art, but for the most part, who wants to see most of these books? Like literally, there's a Batgirl book where someone drew the door to the bathroom on the other side of the tub. Like, oh, I need to use the restroom in the middle of the night. Let me remember to step over my tub. It's like, boom, 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 boom. Ow. Prime example. 8. Desexualization of female characters to the point of repulsion or androgyny. How many times have we seen, for instance, literally a once very busty Carol Danvers now being very flat-chested Carl Manvers? And that's just one character. I mean, and I'm not saying you have to have her spilling out of her clothes or anything, but just she was always portrayed as being very voluptuous, you know, having a wonderful figure, and then all of a sudden she's flat-chested and built like a man. Just saying. You don't want to, you know, us criticizing what you've done, don't do dumb shit. Risk-averse storytelling for narcissistic selfie-taking Mary Sue. I mean, really, you can just kind of take for, like, it's stepping out of comics a bit into, like, I'm going to touch on Star Wars with, you know, Mary Ray Sue. But, I mean, let's also go into how many different, like, the best way I can put it, there is a trend in modern storytelling to have women knock down the men for the sake of just knocking down the men and looking good. Like, once again, we're going to go She-Hulk. I think that's the best example I can really think of for that, where she went and all of a sudden has this great strength, greater than the Hulk, and this, that, and the other. Yeah, uh-huh. Sure. We're gonna move on from that. Fast track employment of artists, writers with a progressive political bias or multiple diversity qualifiers. There's old blue hair that when Comicsgate first started, we all kind of first came on the scene, even though, you know, I don't like 90% of us never took off. Case in point. Point being, old blue hair was known to have the ear of people like Joe Quesada Jr., C.B. Cebulski, things like that, because they appreciated what she did, because she was stirring up the pot and getting gotcha shots from people and so on and so forth. And it was like, I still stand by, she was up to some shenanigans, and she was getting a hold of information through not so legal means, because I know when she was talking about having some people's addresses and whatnot, there were a couple of those people that I could have swore said their information wasn't publicly known, that they had paid to have the majority of their information privated because of people like her. So, and mind you, while she never got into the industry proper, she did have a comic book, if I remember right, with her as one of the characters, and this, that, and the other. I'm just saying, that is a good example. And then 11, which is the biggest one here, open antagonism towards older readers. When you have people like myself who can tell you about these stories and tell you about comics and tell you about characters in depth and with a full understanding of their backstory, who they are, how they are, things like that, and then you turn around and have this, like, I guess you could say, it's blatant hatred for me when I, for the longest time, was your biggest hype man, me and many others like me who were constantly out in public talking about these movies and how excited we were and things like that. We getting, you know, ran off and being the villains and bigots and this, that, and the other really did change the entire dynamic of the comic scene, because now these books can't take risks like they could before, thus the risk-averse storytelling, because there's no real risks involved. They toe the leftist line because they know that they can, what little money they will get from the leftists is they will get simply to own the chuds, the bigots, the righties, so on and so forth. And that's also why comics aren't selling. Because, like, they're talking about bringing back the Ultimate line, and me, I'm like, no, 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 no. Everyone, no. Do not give Marvel 1 red cent. They didn't want our money. Don't give it to them. Don't. I'm not giving them my money. You shouldn't give them your money. I don't care if it's Marvel, it's DC, Image, whatever. They didn't want our money. Our money was not good enough. They said we were, this, that, and the other. Therefore, now that they're trying to get us back, too bad. We've moved on. I have indie comics that I have a stack of indies I need to read, alright? That I am so far behind on. Common America, Guerrilla Galaxy, Rags, so on and so forth. I can, tell you there is good comics out there, and we don't need to go to the big mainstream, publishers anymore. And that's what they're really afraid of. The fact that we don't need to go to them, and they know it. So, I kind of feel like this thread by Ethan Van Sciver, while on the one hand is kind of informative, on the other hand, I'm kind of like, it's a day later than dollars short, bro. I mean, nothing against you. You're trying to make a valid point, but we all know this. And you know what? We're all like, yeah, and? Let DC burn. Let Marvel burn. Let Image burn. IDW. All of these various companies. Let them burn. We're done. They don't get my money. I'm straight Scrooge McDuck. I'm keeping my money. But, alrighty, and with that, I'm going to go ahead and, yeah. I think that's a good place to call it a latest project. I think that's going to come out really nice when I'm done. That's been a whole lot of work. But alrighty, with that, like, subscribe, follow me on the Twitters at Brainiac420. Find me everywhere else at Bob Jones Comic Wars, and I shall catch you folks later. Have fun, folks.